what really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Monday, July 23rd, 2018, getting down toward the bottom of the month here, and start of a brand new week, and it just rolls on, the stuff that keeps coming on out. So we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments and questions here. Now, oh my goodness, we've already got ourselves a caller on the line. Francis in Montreal, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. This was a big weekend for news. And as you know, all the FISA warrant material has come out on Friday.
We're going to be talking about that.
Yeah, and James Clapper went on TV, and I don't know what his game is, whether he's trying to, absolve himself of responsibility. He's running for cover. But he said that ultimately this whole Russiagate thing has been done at the direction of Obama.
Yes.
But that's nothing. The big news is a letter was released, the top secret STRAP3 SIGINT UK eyes only letter from GCHQ. And that's like, the center of all the security and spying of the whole Western world with, Echelon and all that stuff. That all goes to GCHQ, right?
Oh, well, it goes to other places as well.
Yeah, but you know what? They're finding out now, like, for example, the Canadians spend $6 billion a year from CES sending their data to GCHQ, but even the Prime Minister and the Privy Council is not allowed to see any of that data. And they're finding out now that even the U.S. high-ups are not allowed to see some of that data. But the point of my call is this. This letter was released, and it's tied to the fact that Robert Hannigan, who was the director, he resigned after only 2 years. I think it was in April 2017, and it's tied to the fact that there was a letter written by him, and it is ISA 94, Application for Renewal of Warrant CSO/142263, to surveil 725 Fifth Avenue, New York, USA, 5th and 26th floors. And there's 5 bullet points. I'll read you just number 1 and number 4 because those are the relevant ones. Number 1, on 28th of August 2016, GHQ CSO filed for permission to execute Project Folsom at the request of the U.S. President, seeking intelligence gathering into the Trump Organization and Donald J. Trump for President Incorporated, both located at 725 Fifth Avenue, New York, USA. Activities include foreign and U.S. domestic signals collection in regard to communications with Russian hostile actors. And then point 4 is U.S. National Security Advisor Rice has requested on 17th November 2016 that we continue our surveillance during the transition period. So Trump is already president-elect, as internal U.S. intelligence is potentially compromised by the incoming Trump administration. So you've got a president of the United States asking a foreign spy agency to spy on the president-elect.
Yep. Is that letter available online, and could you email me the URL?
I'll email it to you right now. I didn't want to go too much. There's one other thing I'd like to talk to you about, but I don't want to go too far off the topic because all this stuff with Putin making threats about the weapons he's got, I'll call you another day about that, but this is the big story to me of the day. It's just blowing my mind. I've got it right here in front of me, and I'll email it to you.
Okay. I appreciate that.
Have a good day, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. Well, that's a rather stunning development if the letter can be verified. We'll have to wait and see if GCHQ tries to undermine it or deny it. And I did a web search, and I didn't find anything immediately about it. So it must be brand new here. All right, now, a little bit of an observation here. As you know, the poll numbers are not looking good for the Democrats, and the more outrageous the antics that we see from the extreme left, the worse the numbers are getting. And so over this last weekend, we're actually starting to see the Democratic Party break into two, shall we say, components. And there is a new centrist Democratic Party that is coming together. And I think Joe Lieberman basically said it. If Ocasio-Cortez is the new party model, the Democrats are done. Not exact working here. But leading moderate Democrats are basically out there saying that the party needs to move back to the center, and they can still, be all-encompassing, all-embracing, all-inclusive. But I think they're realizing that all of the extremist behavior is working against them now. All right, we're going to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. Over in Chicago, long known for its tradition of political honesty and non-corruption here, there is a candidate running for the mayor of Chicago, Willie Wilson. And basically he went down yesterday morning into church on Chicago's South Side and handed out $300,000 to 2,000 voters through his Dr. Willie Wilson Foundation, which is a 501c3. And he basically said that he did the giveaway to assist homeowners who are struggling to pay their property tax bills. Well, it almost doesn't matter what the homeowners are going to use the money for. To me, this looks like a rampant attempt to simply buy votes. And I'm sure that Wilson's opponents are probably going to make that same connection. All right, let's talk about the Russiagate situation. It has really gone on way too long. And yet the hysteria is ramping up. Shrill, emotional, just way over the top. And the fact that Trump met with Putin in private and then publicly expressed doubt about the establishment Russia narrative has got some of the political factions in the United States into an emotional state that is indistinguishable from what you'd expect if Russia had actually bombed New York City. And you have to remember, there is no evidence to back up any of it. It's pure air. There's no there there. Now, Trey Gowdy, once again, it's hard to get a read on this guy because you think he's there looking, at the big picture, and then all of a sudden he'll just come out of left field with something bizarre. So Trey Gowdy basically is chastising Trump for inviting Putin to Washington this fall, and went further to say that some members of the president's administration should consider quitting if Trump won't listen to their advice. Well, those advisors around Trump are the problem. They're the swamp. They're the deep state. They're the ones that keep talking him into doing things like dropping missiles on Syria after a false flag dust attack. It wasn't even a gas attack. But it's very surprising that to hear Gowdy say that. On the other hand, it might be a good thing if some of those people did resign and Trump decided to reach outside the Beltway for the replacements. Anyway, as Francis was mentioning, late Friday, hoping that it would be a non-story by Monday, no such luck, the Department of Justice finally, after years of litigation and demands for it, released the Carter Page FISA application. Now, it's heavily redacted, but there's still a lot of amazing things in there. Basically, there was no basis for suspecting Carter Page of being a Russian spy, which was the reason for the FISA application. Now, Gowdy went on Fox News yesterday and said, obviously, this FISA application is good news, and it basically confirms every suspicion we've had all along. within just the first few pages of the application, it's confirmed that the FISA application relied heavily on information from British spy Christopher Steele's infamous anti-Trump PP dossier. So in other words, it was a foreign spy meddling in our election that the FBI used to justify spying on Carter Page on the basis that Page was acting with foreign powers to meddle in the election. For those of you who like a little irony. But it did show the FBI was being influenced by Clinton-funded partisan research. And if you'll remember, it was Fusion GPS funding Steele's dossier, which received funding from the Clinton campaign, DNC, and Obama's Organizing for America, another link back to Obama himself. So this is a huge scandal. It is a huge scandal, and the corporate media is still trying to tamp it down. But this is finally starting to surface, and this stuff is stuff you need to share with everybody, especially coming on up to the midterm elections in November. So basically, they smeared Carter Page as a Russian agent, but he has not been charged for almost 2 years. And basically, they lied to the judge. There was a clear intent to deceive. The FBI had a single source, which was the Steele dossier. That was it. That was the entire evidence, and I use the word loosely, presented to the FISA court. Now, Judicial Watch is urging Donald Trump to order the full declassification of the Page FISA application. I think that would be a very, very good thing. So what's really interesting is to hear the politicians kind of bob and weave about what's going on. And over at the Intelligence Committee, there was this interesting dialogue, if you will, when they were talking with Rod Rosenstein. And Representative DeSantis asked Rosenstein, the Russia investigation, who started it, who was the agent, was it Strzok who started it, who opened the case? Rosenstein fidgeted and said, that matter is under review by the Intelligence Committee, and there's nothing I can talk about it publicly regarding the initiation of the investigation. So DeSantis comes right back and asked if the FBI paid for Hillary's garbage dossier. Rosenstein said, I'm not in a position to answer that question. Just evasion after evasion after evasion. DeSantis asked, do you know the answer to the question? Rosenstein said, I believe I know the answer, but the Intelligence Committee is the appropriate committee, blah, 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 blah. And DeSantis came on back and said, no, that's not true. We have oversight over your department and FBI, and whether public funds were spent on a dossier, that's not something that's classified. We have every right to the information. You should provide it. And then as Francis mentioned on his phone call here, James Clapper was on a CNN interview Saturday and basically let slip. This all goes right up to President Obama. And he said right on TV, if it weren't for President Obama, we might not have done the Intelligence Committee assessment that we did that set up a whole sequence of events which are still unfolding today, including Special Counsel Mueller's investigation. President Obama is responsible for that. It was he who tasked us to do that Intelligence Committee assessment in the first place. So there it is. We're way past Watergate right now. Now, they may be just trying to wear everybody down with this, or I don't know why they keep going. They've found nothing. But apparently, public support for the Mueller investigation is declining because it's been going on for over a year now. They haven't really done anything except find some ancillary crimes completely unrelated to his original mission. They have not been able to prove there was collusion between Trump and Russia. Now, Rand Paul is siding with Trump on Russia, saying that, yes, the handling of Russia was good, peace is a good idea, and says critics are motivated by dislike of the president. I think there's another motive involved, and that's the almighty dollar. Because I'm sure that all of these people out there pushing for a new Cold War with Russia, or even a hot war with Russia, or war with anybody, are heavily invested in the armaments corporations. What Eisenhower referred to as the military-industrial complex. War is profitable for people who've got lots of defense company stocks. And that's why they want to push the country in that direction. They don't care about you. They don't care about your kids who are going to get killed and crippled in the war. They don't care about the potential damage to this country if we actually lose the war, which is entirely possible. They just want to make more money. That is the curse of our government today. It is populated by people whose sole interest is using their government position to put more money in their pocket. To take it out of your pocket, put it in their pocket. And if 1 million of our young people have to be sent to horrible, bloody deaths, well, that's just the cost of doing business here. Now, Rand Paul has come on out saying that he may not support Trump's nominee for the Supreme Court, Kavanaugh. And his sticking point is one that we talked about a while back, where Kavanaugh says that this mass surveillance and spying on Americans, he does not see that as a Fourth Amendment violation. That apparently Kavanaugh considers national security, meaning the government secure from the people, as trumping the right to privacy. And that is worrisome. And that is an issue I also have with Kavanaugh himself. So this may take a long time, and we're going to see what happens after the midterms, whether there's going to be a change in nominees. Now, last we were talking about the revelation that Peter Strzok's wife has been in charge of the so-called investigation into the Clinton Foundation for 21 months and has done nothing about it. It's just being blocked. They don't want to touch that one. That's the third rail. That'll bring down the entire government. It's now come on out that within hours of Strzok and McCabe covering up the contents of the Wiener laptop, Strzok's wife was promoted to Securities and Exchange Commission Deputy Director. Interesting timing here. That must have been Strzok's price, as it were. So let's get back to that spy and Butina. And she's been arrested and charged with espionage on behalf of Russia. She was spying on the NRA and on conservatives. But on Wednesday night, John Solomon told Lou Dobbs the FBI had known about Butina for 2 years, and they knew what she was doing. And they did not warn the people that she was spying on. Now, this is a major development. Is she a double agent? Was she actually working for the FBI? Was the FBI trying to use this Russian agent to get conservatives and the NRA into compromising situations? It's an ugly situation out there. Okay, let's see. Over in Afghanistan, last Thursday, there was another U.S. airstrike that killed a family of 14. And it has reignited a grassroots movement among the Afghan people. They want the United States gone. They're tired of all the bombings. They're tired of all the interference. They're tired of the opium, which has become a curse on their country as well as ours. They want the U.S. out. There's a very ugly video about some of the damage that was caused. Meanwhile, over in Raqqa, where the U.S. insists civilian casualties were minimal, they've unearthed over 1,200 corpses in mass graves. More about that when we come back from these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And yes, once again, we're coming to you with our hand outstretched and little collection plate, if you will. Republic Broadcasting needs your help. That's just how it is. And we need you to step up because we're in a war right now. You can see it happening every day. It escalates a little bit more, a little bit more. Those who want to keep you in the dark are using everything in their disposal, the corporate media. They've got lots of money because they make more money keeping you ignorant than they would be able to get if you're informed. So that's why Republic Broadcasting is here. That's why What Really Happened is here. That's why I've been doing this for 25 years, almost 25 years. So the postal address where you can send a check or money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Road, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number to call in a debit or credit card donation or to pledge to be a recurring subscriber is 800-724-2719, extension 1 during business hours, extension 3 at all other times. All right, getting on back to Raqqa. Back in 2017, Raqqa was hit with 30,000 artillery rounds and thousands of airstrikes, which reduced 90% of the city to rubble. And the U.S. still claims there were low civilian casualty figures, and obviously that is wrong. And the rights group's findings and witnesses, well, according to this article, say the U.S. is just deeply in denial. No, they're not. They're lying. They're flat out lying. They don't want you to know of the horrible war crimes of the civilians. And over there in Raqqa, the Reconstruction Committee, they're trying to start rebuilding and clearing away. It's going to be a very, very long job. And they're convinced they're going to find more of these graves out there. All right, let's take some phone calls. And we're going to start with Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, I just want to comment on what the earlier caller, I think it was Francis, was talking about with the new revelations about GCHQ and so on.
Yeah.
That, it's been my opinion since the very beginning, I think I've told you this a couple times on the air, that this inevitably has to come back to Obama. He's certainly the highest governmental official involved, but just consider for a moment, right, that we have, look at all the agencies that we have involved. We have the FBI and the justice system. We have the State Department. We have the National Security Council and the National Security Advisor. We have the UN person doing the unmasking. We have, in Peter Strzok, we have a guy who could treat, because of his status as both a CIA and FBI guy, he could get on the horn with GCHQ and other intelligence agencies putting his CIA hat on. We have Obama appointees, Brennan, Clapper, Strzok, Comey, Lisa Page, all these people are all Valerie Jarrett. What's her name from the doing the unmasking at the UN? All these people, all these agencies, all these appointees. Hillary herself, of course. We then have Obama also linked with all this, with the Soros, who funds Antifa, who funded the election, the Hillary election, the biggest single donor, also the biggest single supporter of Antifa. And the link that Obama was feeding money. Remember when they were dismissing Justice Department investigations on companies, yes, but they had to donate to Democratic causes, among which were Antifa?
Yes.
All this has been orchestrated from the top. And I have to ask myself the question I know you've asked yourself a million times, and I agree with your, why would a guy like Obama, who's going to be, and already is, I'm sure he's got millions socked away in Cayman accounts and things like that, but he was going to be assured a life of, riches and ease and all that for the rest of his life. Why would he risk his legacy unless he was so involved in that horrible Hillary Clinton Foundation, or worse?
Yes.
But I mean, this guy's a total disaster. His hand is everywhere in this. And now we have the information that was told by Francis. And it's just, it's just amazing. He has corrupted everything. His initial move was the initial corruption move for him was, at least as a president, was appointing Hillary. You know, that started the whole thing for him.
They made that deal back in 2008. Remember when Hillary and Obama had that private meeting in a house? Anyway, listen, Peter, stay on the line. I'm going to take you through the next commercial break, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking with Peter in Los Angeles, and Francis did, in fact, email me the links to the letters, and I'm going to be putting them up at the website. But again, getting down to bullet point 4, U.S. National Security Advisor Rice has requested that we continue our surveillance during the transition period as internal U.S. intelligence is potentially compromised by the incoming Trump administration. Now, to me, given that we know U.S. intelligence is involved in all kinds of nefarious activities like gun and drug running and overthrowing other governments, clearly they were afraid of this outsider coming on in and saying, wait a minute, this is not what you guys are supposed to be doing. So they bent every effort to get Trump corralled and under control. Apparently they have succeeded. But this does say this was all done at the request of President Obama.
And Mike, it goes back. It now puts kind of a different light on the fact on the original 2012 National Defense Authorization Act that where the president, the executive, could put a line through your name or my name or anybody's name and make them disappear without trial, right?
Yes.
And another one with now, of course, under Obama and Holder and Lynch, they put forth that they could assassinate Americans without any oversight anywhere in the world for any reason whatsoever. All they had to do was say they wanted to kill them, and they could kill them. So you put all that together in one office, and the question I have is, that's worth asking anyways, is who corrupted who to begin with? Was it the intelligence communities that corrupted the Clintons and the Obamas and all those guys, or did they corrupt the intelligence and bring them along? I
think it's the first case here because we know that CIA has been actively involved in recruiting very young people and grooming them for political office. So we know that was the case with Obama. As far as the Clintons, they started out corrupt, but that's what made them useful to the CIA during that whole gun and drug running operation down into Nicaragua in the mid-1980s. So maybe it's just a bunch of equally corrupt people coming together and say, ooh, we can have more corruption now. But there is no question it is totally corrupt. And I think that is why the bureaucratic government, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, has been in such a panic under Trump. Because at any moment, he could start to break free, fire his current advisors, start firing a lot of these top intelligence agency officials. He's got the authority to do that. And he could start saying, yeah, let's have some real honest investigations into this. Of course, doing so makes him a target. And as I mentioned last week, there are already so many parallels between what's going on today and what was leading up to the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And maybe that's how they got him under control. So they simply said, hey, we did do Kennedy. We did do Vince Foster.
Here's another thing to think about. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Is that, and which came first and who corrupted who? I think as I think about it, you're right. It had to have been the intelligence agencies who had the power, they had the access, they had the money to a basically power-hungry and money-hungry Clinton, a power-hungry, money-hungry Obama. And by the way, they couldn't sell that bill of goods so much to JFK, nor could they sell that bill of goods so much to Trump, because he already had power and money, and so did JFK.
Yep.
So, it's interesting, though. Man, oh man.
Well, I'm seriously concerned for Trump's safety and that of his family. and I just hope his protective detail are drinking lots of coffee, keeping their eyes open. Anyway, Peter, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go and switch over to Tom in Indiana. Aloha, Tom. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
How are you doing today? Good to hear you. Anyway, on Friday's show, you talked about the Strutt link to the Strutt's wife and that. So what I did is I got on there and I looked it up, and then I got the link and I sent it to all my friends. And then I said, hey, you know what? The Goodlat was on the TV this weekend, and I thought maybe you should know about this. So I tried to email them that, and you can't email those people. They're so covered up. You got to have 9 digits of the zip code to even email them. So I guessed at some numbers, and I couldn't get it right. So I called his office up, and I put it on his phone as far as recording. And then Rand Paul was supposed to talk to the president today. So I called his office, and I told him that about what was happening, and hoped that they'd send it to Rand Paul. And they asked me what website was that, and I told them that I think it was Brass Balls. I think that's the one you linked it to, And then I emailed this to our local radio guy. He does the 3 to 7 thing, and he never mentioned it at all. So this weekend, I sent it over to Drudge Report, because I always look at them first thing in the morning to see what's going on, because he usually has the good stuff. And, he hasn't had anything on it at all, so they've got the kibosh on that particular story. And the other thing I want to tell you, another thing is, I believe when Trump met with Putin, he made a deal with him that Putin, when he comes back in the fall, that he'll bring all the papers on the yellow cake, the Iranian war deal, so Trump can lay that out in front of Congress and show them where all that money went.
Well, the situation we have here, I think, is exemplified by Peter Strzok's wife. The people in control of the investigations refuse to investigate. And again, I think the reason why there was such a panic when Trump won the election is for decades there has been this core of corruption growing within the government like a tumor that involves drug running, slush funds, even selling out our own country to espionage. And a scandal of that magnitude, the federal government could never survive it. So now they all have to protect it. Even people who absolutely loathe Hillary Clinton are working to keep this undercover because they don't want to lose their jobs. And I think that's what that 4th bullet point in that GCHQ letter is really saying. The incoming Trump administration was a threat to U.S. intelligence, which is sort of this wrapper they put around all of this skullduggery.
Well, I think you had to put out a call to your listeners and have them all email their representatives about that link and follow it up with a phone call.
Well, I just posted it to whatreallyhappened.com, and it's an article from, basically it just says, GCHQ boss left in 2017 after Obama ordered Project Folsom spy ring against Trump, and a scan of the actual letter is in that article, so you can all take a look at it for yourself. Make a local copy. This is something that might be Orwellized off of the web in the very near future.
Great, Mike. Have a good day, and aloha to you.
Aloha to you too, and we're going to switch over to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I want to talk about those great heroic rescuers, the white helmets. Did you talk about them yet?
I was just getting to them right now, and a lot of people are looking at this evacuation of the white helmets through Israel, proving that there are at least some Arabs that Israel is very friendly with. Supposedly they've been taken to Jordan, where they're going to stay for 3 months. Then they're going to be repatriated to Canada, Great Britain, and I think those are pretty much the two. And Netanyahu was out there saying that Israel was asked by Trump and Trudeau to evacuate the white helmets. Now, we know the white helmets are effectively the same organization as Al-Nusra Front. and they've been caught on video aiding al-Nusra terrorists execute Syrian civilians. So I don't know how many people are going to be comfortable having them move into their neighborhood.
And remember, there's most likely advisors in there, too. They had to get out in that bunch of group. But, hey, Mike,
no,
it was just shooting in Canada.
Hang on. You're absolutely right. That's a distinct possibility. And Ryan Dawson did a video that under the cover of evacuating the white helmets, that the al-Qaeda leadership has been extracted because Syria, basically the Syrian war is over and the U.S. did not get what it wanted.
And Mike, there was just shooting in Toronto the other day.
Yeah.
I mean, come on now. They're bringing these people into, these countries. How smart are they? I mean, my God, you're bringing jihadists into the West. And this is a scary thing because, the neoliberals, which are doing this, basically, are bringing Wahhabi jihadis into the West. This shows you. I mean, it's bizarre. Why wouldn't they stay to help the people?
Well, any help is going to be good, but, the Red Cross is there for the crisis moment. And then after that, supposedly FEMA comes in for the longer term here. And anyway, I'm looking at the story about the Toronto shooting, and I'm not seeing the name of the suspect, or in fact, any identifying information about the suspect. But it does say that the mayor of Toronto's solution is to basically enact a citywide gun ban. No guns allowed. Okay, we'll fix that.
No Aloha snack bar?
Yeah, no more Aloha snack bar.
Hey, but Mike, you know what the routine is? If it's a Aloha snack bar, they go, it's a mentally ill person. Remember when it happened in Europe and in UK also? And Mike, there was just a case in the UK. Did you see that one where this little kid was waiting for his family that went shopping, and they looked Middle Eastern on the videotape and on the pictures, threw acid in his face, and that happens in the Middle East with the acid throwing in Saudi Arabia and stuff, right? And Pakistan. Yeah, so that's crazy, man. You could be sitting on a park bench, and these people just come along and throw something like that in your face, and they're bringing them into their country. Mike, I'm flabbergasted.
I mean, these acid attacks, they permanently scar your face. You're lucky if you don't go blind. And you're right. We're bringing in, a rather dangerous new population to this country. Migration is a filter. We're not getting the good people from that source country. We're getting the bad people. And you're right. They're bringing them in like crazy. Still no signs of slowing.
Are they going to get job? Are they going to be put on the welfare rolls? Not have a job, live in the areas? But they're going to live in areas that don't. Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say these refugees are getting a better deal from the U.S. government than us legal citizens.
Yeah, but they're not assimilating. We all talked about this before, and not only you, but they're not assimilating in their cultures. They just get more radicalized living in their own communes.
Yes.
And that's a dangerous thing. Because eventually the communes are going to spread outward, and then other people
we're going to have no-go zones in this country. We absolutely are. Anyway, Dustin.
Do I have time here? I wanted to. Oh.
Okay, you got one more thing?
Yeah, can you hold me over if the break's coming up?
No, we've still got 4 minutes until the break's here, so just let me hear it.
I just want to say I didn't mention this on Friday about how Pakistan's going to have 6 to 8 subs built by the Chinese. And also, I don't know if you read this about China has went to Sri Lanka and is going to loan them with a grant $245 million, which is equivalent to $1.25 billion yuan. And I wonder if they're using U.S. treasuries to for the grant, because they can, right?
Maybe.
So basically, the U.S. will be paying for the Chinese building up Sri Lanka, basically, because of they're a creditor nation, right? And they owe our debt. They hold our debt. So, that's amazing, though. They're all over the world now.
I think back to the years before the 12 years of Reagan Bush Sr. when the United States was the world's largest creditor nation. And here we are all these years later, and now we're the world's largest debtor nation.
It's opposite.
Yes.
But the world's been flipped, Mike. We're a neoliberal Marxist empire, and Russia and China, believe it or not, even though China's got a communist party, they're more mercantilist now, like we used to be, or the British Empire, right?
Yeah, they just want to make products and sell them. You know, that's China's ambitions. Okay,
they're
Dustin?
around the world, Mike.
Oh,
I mean, okay. I got a bad connection.
Okay, that explains it. All right, well, Dustin, we're going to let you go here, and we're going to take a quick phone call from Al in Canada. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. How are you doing?
Doing okay?
As you know, I live in Canada, and we're getting 250 of these white helmets, apparently.
Yep.
You know, I just can't believe it. It's unbelievable. I heard about this earlier this morning. And, you know, that shooting in Toronto, that happened, like last night sometime, and they still haven't released the name or the identity of that person. There's got to be a reason for that.
Yeah, I noticed that. I was trying to find that, get a confirmation of that. But we're seeing more and more of these liberal governments around the world block that information. It's like I said during the beg for the donations. They make more money if you are kept ignorant. They don't want you to know what's going on. And that's what is a good example.
Trudeau's done, Mike.
I'm sorry?
Done. Trudeau is done.
Yeah,
he
I hope
won't
so.
be reelected.
I hope so.
If he is reelected, then it's fraud. Because liberal support has collapsed in Ontario. We voted in Rob Ford, and he's done a lot of great things in only 2 weeks. Quebec is going conservative, which is I never thought that would ever happen.
Yeah.
And of course, you have Manitoba, Saskatchewan, even the East Coast. They're going conservative.
Yeah,
Trudeau's gone.
We're starting to see that happen here in the United States, and the Democrats basically self-destructed by going hard left, loony left, whatever. Anyway, listen, Al, got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. Mike. We will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, over the weekend, Israel uncorked on western Syria and basically hit a military site in the Masyaf countryside. Israel is claiming they are Iranian military installations. But again, there's no proof. It's just Israel bombing to bomb here. What is a little more worrying is that Arabic media is saying that Israel has now obtained a list of Iranian targets in Iraq. And if that's true, we may see Israel start bombing inside Iraq. Wouldn't be the first time without an actual war. Don't forget it was Israel that bombed Iraq's nuclear power plant up in Osirak under the excuse that they were using it to build nuclear bombs in a secret basement, the way Israel does at Dimona. And of course, following the Iraq War, international inspectors went up there to the ruins of the Osirak reactor, and all they found was a reactor. So that is a little alarming. Now, Israel has launched a U.S.-backed missile shield on the Syrian frontier. And apparently they launched 2 of the David's Sling interceptor missiles at rockets which were just being traded from the internal fighting in Syria. But I guess they just wanted to have a live fire test. And Israel, of course, is saying they're very nervous about what's going on because as Syria continues to clean the jihadis from the southwest, they're getting closer and closer to the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. And Israel is apparently concerned that Syria might want to take that back because it is their territory. No nation on earth recognized Israel's annexation. There was a push here in the United States to do so, but coming so soon on the movement of the embassy, I guess that one died a very slow death. The situation down on the border with Gaza is still going on again on Friday. There were peaceful protesters marching and being shot at. A reporter covering the story lost her brother. He was literally blown to pieces. So what was really interesting, though, is that this time Israeli activists went down and marched along that Gaza fence with the Gaza protesters. And I don't know if it was to deter the IDF snipers. It didn't work. 4 more people have been killed. But apparently even the people of Israel think this occupation and collective punishment of the Gazans has gone on way too long. Over the weekend, yet again, thousands of settlers stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque under the protection of armed security guards. It's a provocation. And some of them apparently did Jewish religious rituals in the compound, which the Muslims would find highly offensive. All right, we're going to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Pardon me. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. Phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. As we reported last week, Jewish Voices for Peace have started organizing Jewish groups that oppose trying to equate anti-Semitism with criticism of Israel. The list has now grown to 40, and this is going global. And it really is very ridiculous to claim that criticism of a government represents race hate or racism. That's like trying to say it's the only people who criticize the Nazis are those who hate Germans. It's a ridiculous idea, and Israel's been getting away with this for a long time. They're considering bills in this country that would legally say you cannot criticize Israel, it's anti-Semitic, and it's racist, and the First Amendment be darned. Now, hopefully, some public interest group, if these laws get passed, are going to go for a Supreme Court challenge. Because it's completely against the First Amendment. We have a right to speak our minds, to ask questions, and to air our grievances against any government on earth. That's what that First Amendment is for. Now, as you know, again, over the weekend, in addition to the 4 Gazans who were shot, there was one IDF soldier who was shot and killed because now they're starting to shoot back in Gaza. And I can imagine the look of surprise on the IDF's face. You know, they're shooting back at us. Are they allowed to do that? Well, yeah. So, over the weekend, Israel launched a major assault into Gaza, and they blew up a lot of buildings. And apparently, Egypt warned Hamas that Israel was ready to go to war if there was any response to the raids. Now, Egypt is also threatening to impose sanctions on Hamas if it does not end the launch of incendiary airborne devices toward Israeli territory. Well, Hamas is really not in control of it. You've got a lot of very desperate people out there, and more than a few agent provocateurs. Remember, those balloons and those kites are Israel's justification for continuing to fire on those Gazans. Now, Hamas is demanding Israel ease restrictions on the flow of goods into Gaza. Hamas also called for Egypt to keep open the Rafah border crossing and to press Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas to pay the salaries of Palestinian authorities employees in Gaza, which makes sense. What bothered me about this article, no mention of Israel's shooting of the unarmed protesters, which is really what brought this crisis on. Let's not forget the initiating event. Qatar is buying lots of weapons from Russia, and they've opened negotiations to purchase the S-400 missiles. And I'm sure the U.S. weapons companies are wringing their hands and saying, they can't do that. They're supposed to buy from us. They're our ally. But they aren't really, because remember, Qatar's kind of been isolated from its Gulf neighbors, going all the way back to this ridiculous situation of a misquote in the media, which was corrected and retracted, but there were hot tempers on both sides, and so the situation is very tense. And Qatar is concerned that the entire region is about to erupt into war, a sense that I share. They want to be able to defend themselves. They want to be able to deter other countries from coming into their territory here. Article coming out of Mint Press News, basically talking about how the Trump administration is working in lockstep to lay the groundwork for war with Iran. Everything they're doing is compatible only with a policy of confrontation. Over on Fox News, Brit Hume came on out and reported that Trump is seeking regime change in Iran. Over the weekend, there was reporting key members of Trump's cabinet are leading a campaign to foment unrest in Iran. And then, of course, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani came back with a warning saying that war between the two countries would be the mother of all wars. At which point, Trump turned to Twitter and came out with this bombastic tweet: "Never ever threaten the United States again, or you'll suffer consequences the likes of which few throughout history have ever suffered before. We are no longer a country that will stand for your demented words of violence and death. Be cautious." So, in response to that, Iran has started up a new missile production line. They know what's coming. They know who's driving it. Now, there are still players in the world who are trying to tamp this situation back down. And Germany's Minister of State for Foreign Affairs is encouraging India to continue buying Iranian oil, despite the pressure from the United States. And India is Iran's top oil client. And it's also one of the countries that are most heavily dependent on imported oil. That means the consequences of U.S. sanctions on Tehran will have a hard impact on India, which already has a problem with too high international oil prices. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Over in Libya, during the removal of Gaddafi, one of the things that got destroyed was this amazing water irrigation system, transport system Gaddafi had built. He wanted to green up Libya. And it was an amazing infrastructure project, and it's been heavily damaged. At some point, I'm sure it will be repaired. And it was a case of, oh, accident. We didn't mean to blow up the water connection. But basically, the military targeting of civilian infrastructure, especially of water supplies, is a war crime under the Geneva Conventions, which is precisely what NATO did in Libya and tried to blame the damage on Gaddafi himself. And since then, because of the cost of the ongoing war, apparently they are not able to do work on the water infrastructure. It's deteriorating. And the suffering of the Libyan people just goes on and on and on. Boy, there's just so much evil going on in the world right now. So, there's an article that came on out in Middle East Monitor about how Russia's reemergence as a Middle East power is not necessarily good news. Now, this is obviously written from the point of view of a U.S.-centric analysis. And they start off with the fact that following the staging of the FIFA World Cup, the Russian Federation has a renewed confidence about its role in the world, and basically saying that Russia's influence in the Middle East is growing, and that Putin has achieved a dramatic transformation in Russia's fortunes around the world, which is what a good leader is supposed to do. But I don't think it's a case so much of Russia coming on in and expanding its influence in the Middle East. It's that U.S. influence in the Middle East is in decline. Because the entire Middle East, all they're seeing the U.S. do is bomb and drone strike and regime change. And you're not going to have a lot of influence over people who are feeling you are a threat to their way of life. So I think Russia's merely stepping into a vacuum that U.S. foreign policy has created for itself. Now, over in Yemen, there's a little bit of good news. There is a ceasefire in the war there around the port city of Hodeidah, and the United Nations has decided to go ahead and accept the handover of the port. And this is a very, very good thing because if the UN is in charge of the port, Saudi Arabia cannot attack it, and it can be used to continue to bring aid into the country to the Yemeni people. Saudi officials are out there saying they want a full Houthi surrender as a condition for the port handover. Well, if the Houthis surrender, they don't need to bother with whether the port is handed over or not. They didn't think that one through very well at all. Now, getting on over to North Korea, over the weekend, the Washington Compost ran a story claiming Donald Trump is growing impatient with the plodding pace of the North Korean nuclear negotiations. And so Trump basically came on out slamming the newspaper and they literally issued a veiled threat at the Washington Post's owner, Jeff Bezos, by saying that those postal discounts that Amazon has been getting might just go away. Well, not sure that Trump can really do that because the post office was privatized a while back. It's still losing money hand over fist. But Trump is saying negotiations are continuing. And again, more fake news. Another story that appeared over at CNBC is that Army General Vincent Brooks, the commander of U.S. forces in South Korea, is out there saying that the material needed for North Korea to make nuclear bombs is still intact. And he's saying, we're not seeing any progress. We haven't seen a complete shutdown of production. We've not seen the removal of fuel rods. Well, I think North Korea is waiting for some kind of a sign of commitment from the United States. And the logjam here is each side is saying, you give us what we want first. Actually, what North Korea is saying, we'll do a little, you do a little. We'll do a little more, you do a little more. And Pompeo is out there saying North Korea must do everything the United States wants, and only then will there be sanctions relief. So that's where it's jamming on up. Now, Kim Jong-un is saying he will only give up his nuclear weapons if the U.S. agrees to a permanent peace deal with Pyongyang. Now, an official in Pyongyang said that North Korea may abandon the talks on denuclearization if the U.S. does not agree to such a deal. And basically, they want the existing armistice agreement dissolved and a formal peace, treaty to basically officially end the Korean War, which is still technically going on. Then they can start thinking about digging up all those landmines along the DMZ. But Trump would need the backing of 2/3 of the Senate to ratify a legally binding peace treaty. And I'm sure that North Korea understands the current U.S. government has a bad habit of walking away from treaty commitments that they've already done. But I think Kim Jong-un is playing for time. I think his ultimate plan is the Sunshine Policy. The two Koreas were talking about this years ago, before the U.S. meddled in it. Moon Jae-in is in favor of reunification. I think Kim Jong-un understands if the Koreas reunify, if they end the Korean War and they come back together, the U.S. loses any rationale for coming on in. All right, let's talk about the F-35. This was a very interesting article, came out of Blacklisted News, and it's talking about the F-35's modernization program. Now, these planes, these planes are not even ready for combat. They've got all kinds of problems. They're not even usable in combat, and already they're talking about modernization. Upgrades, we're going to get you upgrades here. And the claim is that the planes are going to get newer engines, from Pratt & Whitney, which will allow them to have more speed, and that there will be a directed energy weapon of some form on there. So we'll see what happens. And by the way, they did that on the F-14. The F-14 was originally developed as a single package where they designed the aircraft and new engines all at the same time. The new engines didn't work out, and the first F-14s were flying on existing inventory engines, and they didn't perform as well as they were supposed to, but later on they got the engines working. Now, this is a video on the front page of whatreallyhappened.com, and you probably ought to take a look at it. It's called Endless War Explained in 2 Minutes, and I'm going to give you some of the high points here. Basically, it's all about the money. It's all about the money. All the way back in 1935, Major General Smedley Butler warned the world that war is a racket. It always has been. It is possibly the oldest, easily the most profitable, surely the most vicious. It is the only one international in scope. It is the only one in which the profits are reckoned in dollars and the losses in lives. Now, 26 years later, in 1961, President Dwight Eisenhower, a retired 5-star Army general, basically warned us about the military-industrial complex, which was this union of lawmakers, defense contractors, and the Pentagon itself. And he ended the speech by saying, in the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. So, 57 years after that, we're looking at exactly what Smedley Butler and Eisenhower were warning us about. The U.S. makes war because they make money out of it. Make your money out of it. War is profitable for the defense contractors and the people who loan money for the war. It's not profitable for ordinary people. It's a giant wealth transfer scam. Now, over at the U.S. Army, they're starting to discharge immigrant recruits who were promised citizenship through a program which has now been discontinued. And so they're letting these immigrants who don't have legal status here, they're being discharged and they face deportation. Boy, talk about a raw deal, huh? So let's talk about the economic news. There's a lot going on over there. As you know, one of the biggest problems young people face is getting a college education. The costs for a college education have skyrocketed way out of sync with the rate of inflation. Hugely expensive. Financial assistance has dried up. And it's all become a machine to take students and plunge them onto that debt hook with student loans that they may spend the rest of their life trying to pay off, because as they come out of college, those high-paying jobs they were promised are not there. Analysts have been looking at the financial realities of being a college graduate versus having gone right from high school into a trade. And they're finding out the trade workers are actually better off. And as a result, applications to colleges are now in decline. So Norwich University has come up with a new idea. They are going to allow students to attend the college for free if they sign a contract to promise a share of their future salary. Pardon me, just a second. So that's the newest thing here. You go to this university, you get to go to school, at least tuition free. You still have to buy your books and so forth and so on. But after you're out of college, for the rest of your working life, you share your income with the college. Now, this may, in fact, lure more people to go to college, although with the loony left on so many campuses, that's also a deterrent. But in the long run, because those high-paying jobs are not, in fact, out there after graduation, the colleges may lose money in the long term. And of course, in order to work this deal, the colleges are going to have some line of credit to keep operating until the first batch of income-sharing students graduates. It's just a real mess. We're going to take a break here for commercials, and we will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, and I'm going to flip up back to the top of the talking points to the domestic politics. Apparently, Devin Nunes has now asked Donald Trump to declassify the entire visa application for Carter Page, because what was turned over Friday night had a lot of redactions in it. And apparently, Trump is considering stripping the security clearances of ex-Obama officials such as Brennan, Comey, Clapper, Rice, Hayden, and McCabe. And to be very honest, they shouldn't still have their security clearances. They're not working for the government anymore. Why do they still have access to this information? So that's going to be interesting. Now, getting back to the economy. If our economy is so good, if it's doing well, then why are almost 40 million Americans still on food stamps? That number is almost exactly where it was at the end of the last recession. And we keep being told by the corporate media and the government, we've made so much progress since that time. And we still have this problem of the huge gap between the rich and the poor, the biggest it's ever been since the 1920s. The Federal Reserve's quantitative easing program has been pumping hot money into the financial markets, and that was a blessing for the top 1%, but not for you. Meanwhile, millions of American families are still having to struggle. The middle class is clearly in decline. 66% of all the jobs in this country pay less than $20 an hour. And close to 40 million Americans rely on the federal government to feed them every month. Now, the reason you don't see that is because of those EBT cards. I mean, excuse me a second. Back during the Depression of the 1930s, it was easy to see people on assistance. They had to line up outside the soup kitchens, and people walking by would look at it, and it was a reminder of just how bad things were. But today it's all being done with these electronic cards. You can be in the checkout line at a supermarket and somebody ahead of you is buying their groceries. They could be on food stamps. You don't know. I mean, unless you take a good look at the card they're using, you don't know. It's being kept invisible. Again, the government wants to keep you ignorant. Now, here's an interesting little story. This came out of the Mirror in Great Britain about how thousands of workers, people who have jobs, are still having to sleep rough. They're homeless. And it's a growing problem called the working homeless. And the article found chefs, engineers, construction workers, and security staff living in doorways, tents, cars, and vans, trying to get enough sleep and to get themselves presentable to continue to hold down their job. And that's not just confined to Great Britain. We've been seeing all these stories from up in Silicon Valley, where there's supposedly all this money floating around, where people who are working for companies like Google are living in their cars. Now, that is just absolutely unacceptable. And the problem is getting worse. The Rothschild banks have been caught up in yet another money laundering scandal, and Switzerland's financial regulator has accused Rothschild and its trust subsidiary of violating anti-money laundering laws in relation to 1MDB, the troubled Malaysian sovereign wealth fund. And according to the regulator, both Rothschild Bank AG and Rothschild Trust AG failed to check where assets from a client came from and disregarded signs the funds could be connected to money laundering anyway, and they just went ahead and took the money. You know, money's good. Doesn't matter where it comes from. The companies run by the Rothschild family are also accused of reporting on the issue way too late. Over at Tesla, another bad warning sign, and that is that Tesla is asking their suppliers, who supply the parts that are put together to make the Tesla 3, he wants a retroactive discount because he's got to make Tesla profitable to keep his investors in line. And basically, the suppliers are saying no. You know, he wants a partial refund going all the way back to 2016. And leading industry experts are saying it's desperate and it's ludicrous. And yes, it is. I think Elon Musk, you know, he's got his fingers in so many pies. I think it's time for him to decide what it is that he wants to do and do that and sell off the other interests to get a cash injection. If he's going to make the Tesla, focus on that. And he can't have it all. He's bitten off more than he can chew. Now, most Germans are supporting Russia's Nord Stream 2 pipeline. And they're saying that the U.S. vitriol is just a desire for the U.S. to have a larger share of the oil and gas market in Europe. Of course, that's what it's all about. That's what the arguments about pipelines are all about, is whose oil gets to market in those pipes. All right, we're going to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And Aloha America, welcome back to the show. Now, over in London at the Ecuadorian embassy, people started getting alarmed. There's been all this talk about handing Assange over to the UK, and there was a video shot showing possessions and furniture being loaded into a van. So a lot of people are very concerned about that. However, over at the Inter-American Court on Human Rights, somebody filed an amicus brief, friend of the court, and basically the Inter-American Court on Human Rights said that yes, you have a right to seek asylum in embassies, and that states must give safe passage to embassy asylees. In other words, according to this Inter-American Court on Human Rights, Great Britain must give safe passage to Julian Assange to fly to Ecuador, to get to the airport. So we'll see what's going to happen on that one. Katie Hopkins has a video out that's also on the front page of whatreallyhappened.com, and it says, don't let America fall as the United Kingdom has fallen. And what she's talking about, of course, is the disruption, the civil disruption from this flood of refugees who are, as a previous caller said, refusing to integrate. In fact, they're coming into these countries with a culture that has evolved generation after generation after generation. And while a reasonable influx of immigrants is to be expected, as Teddy Roosevelt used to say, it's expected they will integrate. They will learn our language, they will learn our laws, they will work within our country because it is our country. And we're not seeing that. And again, I think part of the agenda here by George Soros and the globalists is to erase the idea of any kind of historical identity or cultural identity as a prelude to declaring the one world government. And a lot of people are suffering because of this agenda. A lot of crime going on in these areas, the no-go zones, killings, rapes. And again, the liberals are not looking at the root cause, that they're importing people from cultures with very different codes of behavior. So up in Sweden, they're investing millions in a program to teach migrants not to rape. And they're developing a website for teaching African and Middle Eastern migrants about consensual sex. And the government is pushing these millions to the Ministry of Youth and Civil Affairs. The money will include the further development of UMO.se, the government sex information site in Dari, Arabic, and Somali. And lessons on the site, including teaching the definition of rape. To do something sexually with someone who does not want it is sexual abuse, it says. Well, all of that is well and good. But the refugees are coming from cultures where rape is accepted. And they're coming into new places that they don't want to integrate into. So I don't think this is really going to work. I think this is the Swedish government trying to look like it's doing something about the problem, but can't actually solve the problem, because until those borders get closed and immigration authorities and the police are able to get a handle on the situation, it's going to get worse. It is clearly getting worse over time. Now, here is an interesting little story. There is this Canadian woman, Monica Schaefer, and her brother, German-Canadian Alfred Schaefer, have been arrested in Germany for questioning the Holocaust. Because Monica made a video some years back in Canada. That's the issue. She didn't make the video in Germany. And Germany is basically acting like it has jurisdiction over Canada for the Holocaust denial laws. So they've been arrested. They're now out on bail. And we're trying to get an interview with the filmmaker who made the video in the first place. But when you see such extreme actions, it only underscores the fact that somebody's got something to hide. I mean, if you go around saying that you went for a ride on an alien spaceship, people will laugh at you. You say that you saw Bigfoot, you don't lose your job. If you come on out and say that Michael Jackson is still alive, you don't get tossed in jail. Only in this one area of inquiry is so much politics and law being brought to bear, to not question, to just accept as you are told. Now, my opinion is that given how much we have been lied to over the years, Spanish mine in Havana Harbor, torpedoes in the Gulf of Tonkin, Lusitania not carrying weapons, Saddam's nukes, Assad's sarin gas. The wise and prudent thing to do is to basically take a look at everything we have ever been taught by corporate media and the state-controlled schools. And we have a right to do that and to point out inconsistencies. We have a right to basically point on out when somebody who's become very rich writing a Holocaust survival novel comes on out and admits it was just completely made up. It is the very actions of the defenders of the Holocaust orthodoxy that make it obvious they've got something to hide. And again, this push for these laws in countries saying you can't question the Holocaust like they've got in Germany, that's an affront to freedom of speech. Now, over in the LGBT community, it seems a little bit of internecine warfare is breaking out because an organization for lesbians has launched a formal online blast at LGBT activists for calling them transphobes, and they want the LGBT coalition to drop the L. Now, the lesbians argue they are women attracted to women, and there's no room for men who claim they are women. So they don't want to be part of it anymore. And they're saying biology does make a difference, a big difference, and it's not enough to simply identify as being of a particular gender. So smart ladies there, and probably considering how out of control that whole thing is getting, I think the lesbians are wise to distance themselves from the craziness here. Okay, over in Colorado, there is a former law enforcement officer, including SWAT team, Quinn Cunningham, and he was one of the first responders to a 2013 school shooting near Denver. And what he saw happen there changed his life, and he started basically teaching teachers how to carry inside their schools, how to shoot, how to load, how to make sure you're hitting what you want to hit and only what you want to hit. And basically, that is now his full-time job. And he's involved with a program in Colorado called FASTER, which favors arming school people. I'd still like for somebody to take a look at the link between all these school shootings and prescription psychiatric medication, because the links are definitely there. But we live in a country where it is more important for the big pharmaceutical corporations to make a lot of money than to keep our kids safe in the schools. Now, you remember that Gallup poll we were talking about last week, the one where Russia was really down at the bottom of issues important to the American people, and immigration was right up there at the top. Well, apparently the same survey found that gun control was also not high on the list of problems. And I think that does signal the country's starting to shift conservative. The left just went too far left. They went hard left, they went loony left. We saw all these things like men using the women's room. And I think people just had enough of it and they turned it off. All right, let's talk about computers and internets. There is a company called Dongwon, and they make robotic vacuum cleaners like the Roomba. And they have a model, the Dongwon DG360 smart vacuum cleaners, and it's hooked into the Internet of Things, so you can communicate with it when you're out of home. And security researchers at Positive Technologies revealed there are security flaws that hackers could use to basically turn the vacuum on and prowl the house. And the vacuum has a night vision camera and a microphone. It could be used as a handy little spy on wheels. There are two issues here that I want to talk about. One, we can't just impulsively buy the latest whiz-bang gadget. For one thing, the economy can't support it anymore. Two, the companies who are making these products are just cramming them out the door and into the stores as fast as they can. And we keep hearing all these horror stories about how, oh, this is wide open to hackers, that's wide open to hackers. And I would urge caution. We don't have any Internet of Things here at Haile Rivero. And I certainly have no intention of getting any Internet of Things here at Haile Rivero. I got enough gadgets as it is. And I've got enough systems to maintain as it is. Don't need to add to the workload. So the Roombas not connected to IoT, those are actually very nice things if your floor isn't too cluttered. If your floor is cluttered, Roomba can and does get lost. Over on Google, apparently there are bank details for sale. Hackers are offering full ID, including your phone number and your PIN, for £4 each, with a discount for bulk buyers. And apparently the fraudsters are just buying and selling these credit card and bank details stolen from British consumers on hundreds of open forums. Now, by the way, I'm getting a lot of phishing emails, and I'm sure that you are too. You need to be very careful. Some of them are designed to prompt you to just click a link immediately, like your email account is about to be closed, renew it here. And I'm just saying, you have to be so careful right now, because nobody in government is looking at these problems. It's just this huge crime wave that's hit us all. And it's another reason to maybe stop using plastic cards and go back to cash. In fact, we had an incident happen last week, and I'm still not sure if it was a hack or just a goof. We have a neighbor, and she called us up on our phone, and she said, there's a big box here for Claire, and you need to come pick it up because it's too heavy for me to lift. So went on over there, and it turns out it's this giant box from Nutrisystems, which is this monthly subscription. They will provide all your food and you lose weight. Well, we've already lost weight, so there's no reason we would have signed up for it. So we contacted Nutrisystems and we canceled the order. We sent back their box to them. They sent us a label. And when they looked at the billing and the counting, they got my wife's name right. The address was wrong. That's why it went to the neighbor. The phone number associated with the deal was wrong. And even the credit card number was wrong. But we changed all of our credit card numbers anyway, just in case. Now, as you know, Facebook has come under criticism for very overtly censoring conservative content. And a lot of people are upset with that. They're upset with the ramifications for the First Amendment right of freedom of speech. A lot of people are calling for Facebook to get broken up the way Ma Bell was. And I would support that idea as well. But it is having an effect because Facebook's global usage is down 54% from its peak. So they are in decline. Getting back to Silicon Valley, the Pentagon is approaching some of the major tech giants like Google, Microsoft, and so forth with military contracts. And right now there is an $18 billion contract to develop an Orwellian data cloud. And huge amounts of money, obviously. And the DoD admits they don't have the means to develop the technology themselves. They have to purchase it somewhere else. However, as we saw with the recent upset over at Google, the workers in these tech companies are not happy about this. They don't want to see the military basically come on in and take over everything that they're doing, because with that much money, the military now becomes the tech company's biggest customer and is able to basically do as they please with it. By the way, do you do selfies? I've only ever done one selfie, and that was to send to somebody who sent me a t-shirt that I was actually wearing it here. But apparently researchers have taken a look and found out taking a selfie can be a little dangerous when you're out there trying to get that extreme shot. And in 3 years of news stories, it's been reported 49 people have died from selfies since 2014. 75% of the victims are male. The average age is just 21 years old. Now, I think selfies are a symptom of our national character becoming vain and self-focused. And that's why I don't like them. Anyway, we've got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And I don't know why I'm so phlegmy today. Anyway, the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, and feel free to call on in. All right, so we talked about the selfie deaths, and, you know, again, it seems like the American culture has become self-absorbed. And a big part of that may have to do with an advertising industry that basically sends a message that your entire self-worth is how you look. You know, what clothes you're wearing, you know, what color's your hair, and do you have the latest gadgets and so forth. And so it seems like Americans are becoming quite vain, and I think that selfie stick is definitely part of that process. So over in Google Translate, they have an AI, and there's a glitch. It's translating gibberish into doomsday warnings and prophecies about the second coming of Jesus. And the bug is apparent when you try and translate the word dog from Hawaiian to English. And when repeated multiple times, the AI forms its own nonsensical statements. And Google says the glitch exists because if nonsense is being inputted, the same nonsense will be output. Well, that's known as the GIGO law, but I think an AI ought to realize that when the sentence that's come on in is nonsense, it shouldn't put something out. It should say, that doesn't make any sense. Can you rephrase? Now, last Thursday, there was a major explosion in New York in the middle of Fifth Avenue, a steam pipe, and left a gaping crater in the middle of Fifth Avenue. The problem is that the tunnels, the steam tunnels, are insulated because the steam gets sent between buildings, and in winter it's cold. And it turned out this particular steam corridor was lined with asbestos. So they've had to decontaminate all of the first responders. They've all been exposed, and there are warnings for people all around as well. It is rather amazing that we spend all this money on war, and we don't spend any on updating and refurbishing our infrastructure to the point where we have steam pipes exploding. And it's another sign that our country has just gone down a very bad direction. We are becoming a banana republic by any other definition that's out there here. All right, let's get into health and science issues. Over at Natural News, they have an interesting article, Health's Basics Quiz. Oh, there's the music. We're going to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. So getting on back to this story, this was over in Natural News. And the article is titled, Health Basics Quiz, Which Kills More Americans, Cancer or Chemotherapy? And there are some alarming statistics in there. On average, chemotherapy fails more than 97% of the cancer victims who've been prescribed this so-called mainstream medicine. And of course, chemotherapy itself is very damaging. In fact, 75% of physicians and oncologists refuse chemotherapy for themselves and their loved ones. It's all about making money. Now, my mother died at 47 years of age, and supposedly of cancer, but I got to see what the chemotherapy and the radiation was doing to her, and I've never satisfied myself whether it was really the cancer that did her in or the treatment. Because we're seeing this reckless disregard for safety and efficacy in modern medicine. It's all about getting a new chemical, getting it patented, write up a report saying, we know it's safe, handing it over to the FDA with the appropriate fees to get the FDA approval, and then push it, market it on TVs with all these glitzy commercials. And people really do need to listen to that fast voice at the end, because Claire and I do. And it's just this constant awareness that it sounds very often like the medicine is worse than the condition it's treating. Over in Denmark, they're still having a problem with the Gardasil vaccine, and adverse reactions, serious adverse reactions, now number 1 out of every 500 girls. And health reporter Liselott Blixt of the Danish People's Party was one of the people who led the effort to get Gardasil into Denmark in 2008. She's now reversed course. She wants it absolutely abolished. And she says there are perhaps up to 5,000 young women living in Denmark who suddenly become so sick, we have to simply stop the vaccine. And we have to take responsibility for ensuring that we have safe and effective medications here. So, just do that. And some of the symptoms that they're seeing over there, they're neurological problems like narcolepsy. And these are perfectly healthy girls until they get the Gardasil shot. 1 out of every 500. I'm sure to the pharmaceutical companies, that's not too bad. You know, we make enough off the other 499 where we can pay off the lawsuit on the one who got sick. I'm sure that's been part of the thinking regarding autism and its links to vaccines. But the rates of autism are going up. It'll soon reach a point where the economic cost of treating all of those autistic people, of caring for them, is going to risk bringing down the entire system. Now, as you know, they're once out there saying, time to get your flu shot, get your flu shot. Public health officials are now admitting that the current flu shot has no protection against the Aussie strain, which is making its way around the world right now. And this is a very serious strain of flu. And apparently Public Health England admitted the vaccine, which was given to millions over the winter, showed no significant effectiveness in preventing people from being struck down by H3N2. It just didn't work. Now, over in China, they've got a major vaccine scandal, and it's a big one. And it is causing shockwaves throughout the drug market, and it's forcing the government to basically step on in and regulate what's going on. So there's this company called Changshen Biotechnology, and police are investigating it, its chairwoman and 4 executives, over suspected criminal behavior. Changseng has been found to have falsified production documents related to a rabies vaccine that is given routinely to Chinese babies as young as 3 months, underscoring the challenge the drug market faces cleaning up its image as it aims to promote its vaccines globally. So according to the China Food and Drug Administration, Changshen fabricated production records. We already did that part. Anyway, what's going on is these vaccines have been found contaminated with all kinds of chemicals that shouldn't be in there, including known carcinogens. And they were just shipping them out the door, making their money, having a really good time. So it's not just an American problem, it's global. And here's where you should be kind of worried, because, again, China's pharmaceutical industry markets all over the world, including here in the United States. And this is not the first time there has been a problem with imported Chinese pharmaceuticals either being contaminated or not containing the correct amount of medication they're supposed to. And it really is an issue. Now, China's response to this, and we'll probably see some of it even here in the United States, the censors are already all over the web deleting articles and postings about the vaccine industry, because there's this online outcry over the country's latest vaccine scandal. Now, regulators have halted production of that rabies vaccine, and it's the latest in a series of health and safety scandals, which are fueling the fear over the safety of basic food and medicine, and anger at regulators who are asleep on the job. Boy, does that not sound like what we're going through over here. So China's censors and regulators are trying to stay ahead of the news, deleting posts on WeChat as the state media tries to take control of the narrative and steer it in another direction. So they've stopped the production. Chinese pharmaceutical stocks are down. And as I said before, the problem is that China exports a lot of that medication to here in the United States of America. And there have been problems before, where you're supposed to be taking a tablet that has 20 milligrams of what makes you better, and it only has 10. It's all about the money. It's all about the money. Now, I'm sure the practitioners in the clinics, hospitals, for the most part, are there because they genuinely want to be healers. We do get some bad ones, like that guy who got sent to jail for faking cancer diagnoses, and he should have. But again, it was all driven by money. Now, over at the National Health Service, this one just strikes me as weird. This is from the Daily Mail. Apparently, over at the National Health Service, up to 150 autistic children were given sex change drugs. And the accusations are that these kids might not even be transgender. And these drugs they've been given, they're called puberty blocker drugs. They stop the body maturing. We're into mad scientist territory here. We really, really are. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Gil in Arizona, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Good talking to you again. Good old Sun City, Arizona, where it's too hot, 114 today.
Okay.
Anyway, my dad had pancreatic cancer, which, you don't come out of. Well, at least back in 1977, you didn't come out of that. And I took him to his first dose of chemotherapy. The next day he died.
Ooh, ouch.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, though. They listed on his death certificate heart attack. Well, he had pancreatic cancer, so now he's officially listed as a heart disease, when in fact, the pancreatic cancer and the chemotherapy, in my opinion, is what killed him.
Well, so, again, the fact that he had pancreatic cancer does not rule out him also having a heart attack. And the rapidity with which, like, the first chemotherapy and then he dies, does suggest that it was, in fact, a heart attack. Whether the chemotherapy brought that on, we don't know. We don't know what specific chemicals were being used there. But it's... As I said,
it's kind of hard to say. Yeah, and you talked about something else. I'm an immigrant from Canada, and we had family that used to live in a town called Asbestos, Canada. As a matter of fact, my dad used to have stocks in the company that mined asbestos. Okay. And they had a big mountain outside of out of the town. I mean, it looked like a mountain, and yet it was tailings from whatever they did mining the stuff. And my uncle and some of my family had worked in the town of Asbestos. And what I was wondering from you is this asbestos thing kind of overblown? Because we never heard of anybody having any problems that worked over there.
Well, it depends on what's in the tailings pile. I mean, obviously, there's, I think the first place to look if there was a problem as the people who actually worked for the mine itself. And they may have taken the asbestos out in large chunks, because naturally occurring asbestos does come in large blocks, and then it's sent someplace else to basically be broken up into the fine particles that are then used for insulation and so forth and so on.
Okay, well, yeah, that's always kind of puzzled me. But anyway, that's all I had. Enjoy your show. I generally go on your website, but I do listen once in a while. And you got a great website, and I appreciate your talking to me.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the phone call. And, stay in the shade out there in Arizona, and it will get better later in the year. Talk to you soon.
We'll try, and say hi to Claire. Bye-bye.
I certainly will. Thank you very much. All right, now, there is a contraceptive implant called Essure, and it's being pulled from the U.S. market and also Canada, Europe, South America, South Africa, and the United Kingdom. Apparently, tens of thousands of women trying to use this implant are reporting suffering excruciating pain, bleeding, and allergic reactions. And this product is made by Bayer, which, if you will remember, was the same company that manufactured a blood clotting factor for hemophiliacs that was tainted with the AIDS virus. So, Now, Jeff Bezos has his own space transportation company called Blue Origin. They're going to give SpaceX a run for their money. And it successfully launched what they're calling the New Shepard spaceship from its launch site in West Texas on Wednesday. And the rocket's booster and capsule were successfully recovered back at the launch site. And the specific booster has been used for a third time. They're trying to come up again with a reusable launch vehicle, which would cut tremendous costs getting into space. And the New Shepard rocket is designed to carry 6 passengers. Apparently, they're going to appeal to the tourism industry for the ultra wealthy. And so I guess he's competing against Virgin Air or Virgin Space, whatever they're calling it over there. So good for them. That really is the weak link in space travel. It's just getting up to that first orbit. After that, you can get anywhere in the solar system with relatively little energy. But getting that ship up to orbit, that's always been the hard one. And I think Rutan's drop launch system is one way of making that easier. Or possibly even using a balloon drop launch system. Because when I was putting together my idea for dealing with space junk, that was my idea, that we would have a very small, lightweight rocket that would be hoisted up to the edge of the atmosphere and then launched and aimed at the incoming debris that you wanted to take down. And it would basically emit a cloud of gas that the debris would slam into and slow down just enough to be brought back into the atmosphere. The National Audit Office, and this is coming out of Great Britain, is saying that over half of the packaging reported as recycled is actually being sent abroad to be processed. And for all they know, it may just be getting buried in the landfill or burned. They have no guarantee that it's actually being recycled. Now, they've created this illusion of success, but the result may be quite different. And that's another issue. When government sets up a program of some kind and it's not working, they will try and basically say, oh yeah, this is doing really good. The unemployment numbers are really, really low. Inflation is under control. The GDP is just going like gangbusters here. All right, I'm seeing another article here about Julian Assange. This is coming from The Intercept. And apparently Ecuador will imminently withdraw asylum for Julian Assange and hand him over to the UK. So apparently this Inter-American Court on Human Rights decision is not having an effect, or at least not yet. Of course, this story, this story is actually from a little while ago. So that Inter-American Court thing may change things rather dramatically. All right. Now, let's see. Apparently, a judge has now ordered Robert Mueller to publicly name the 5 witnesses given immunity in his investigation, which I use the word loosely. Apparently, Nancy Pelosi had another episode. Was giving a speech and somehow got triggered and started spasming. Now, right now, Comic-Con is underway in Southern California, and it's a big event. We actually have one out here on Hawaii once a year, and that's kind of cool to see. But this is the big one. This is the international one. And the cast for Fantastic Beasts, the sequel, The Crimes of Grindelwald, were there in person to play the trailer for the movie, which is due out. And Johnny Depp came on out in his Grindelwald costume. And somebody in the audience asked, what would you do if you really did have magical powers? And one of the cast members said, I'd impeach Trump. And apparently the reaction in the room was not what they were expecting. There were a few people who were out there applauding, but the audience really resented the intrusion of real-world politics into what is, after all, a celebration of fantasy and science fiction. And I don't think these celebrities understand how tired the public is getting of all of this constant politics in everything. TV shows, movies, personal appearances, go get Trump, get Trump, get Trump, get Trump. So, again, a lot of people were very disappointed by it. And don't get me wrong, I like Johnny Depp's movies. He's a good actor. And certainly the production values on all of these Harry Potter films have been wonderful. But I'm strongly inclined not to see this sequel because of this behavior. Anyway, we're going to take another break for commercials. I could use some phone calls, and we'll be right back. Aloha America, welcome back to our show here, and the story just now coming on in. Over in Syria, Russia apparently contacted Israel and offered to keep the Iranian forces away from southwest Syria and the Golan. And for some reason, Israel has rebuffed it, saying, no thanks. Now, Moscow is trying to stabilize the country as the war winds down. And one has to wonder, what is Israel thinking? Israel has been justifying their attacks into Syria, saying the Iranians are too close, the Iranians are too close. And now Russia is saying, we're going to pull the Iranians back. And Russia is saying no. Now, or rather, Israel is saying no. Israel may come back and say, we want the Iranians completely gone. But again, it just seems that Putin is the only adult in the room right now. And everybody else, from Netanyahu to Trump, they're behaving like spoiled children. All right, we do have some callers on the line, and we're going to start with James in Kansas. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
About 30 years ago, back when I had a C-band satellite dish, there was a program on there by the Christian Science Monitor, had a TV channel for a while, and they had real interesting documentaries, one right after the other, and they had interviews with these people whose fathers had worked in the asbestos mine up there in a place in Canada, I think that previous caller was talking about, and they lived to be 85 years old. They'd worked in that mine since they were like 30 or 20 years old, and I guess they wore their safety equipment or whatever, but anyway, I never did follow up on it or anything, but maybe there was just kind of some manipulation going on there.
Well, they might have worked in the, away from the asbestos, but like I said, when it comes out of the ground naturally, it's in chunks, and it isn't until later in the processing that it breaks down into those fibers that are used for insulation. I mean, I imagine there's going to be some dust contamination around there. And again, if I were to research this, I would be looking at the health histories of everybody who worked at that mine to see who came down with mesothelioma, obviously. But again, a lot of people worked with asbestos and managed to escape contamination. It's only an issue if you breathe in the dust. And as you said, they may have had safety masks and things like that. Anyway. That's all it would really take. Remember the big stink over on 9/11 was how those first responders were sent into the wreckage of the World Trade Towers without safety masks. They were assured by the head of the EPA, no less, that it was safe to go down there. And those first responders, they've spent the rest of their life dealing with all of these illnesses. So it's inhalation exposure is what causes it.
Okay, well, I'll get off the line and let somebody else talk. Bye.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Mabel in Texas. Aloha, Mabel. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi. I'm calling regarding the information you had last week about JFK and in Dallas when they put all the posters out of him being a traitor.
Yes.
So I figured, well, this is very interesting. I didn't know it. I love history. I was a history major. And I said, this is great. So I decided, foolish me, to go on Facebook and say, wow, history's repeating itself. I found the poster. I posted that up there, and I found other things about Truman meeting with Stalin and how he, on a newspaper page, he thought he was a very smart man and all this, and that Carter met with Brezhnev, things like that. Okay, so now we get into the liberal craziness. I'm going to be 71 years old. I have a friend that I've been friends with since kindergarten. Whoa. I put this on as historical. I figured this, people don't know this. This is great. I didn't mention President Trump or anything. And I just said, well, this is very interesting. History's repeating itself. Oh, my God. She sent a response. Well, the reason nobody responded to your post or liked it is the fact that you're delusional.
Wow.
Enough said. And I thought, wow, is right. So I just, I was taken aback, and then but she's like still one of these bitter people that Hillary didn't win, and she lives in a red state. She lives in.
I said, it sounds like it.
Oh, she lives in North Carolina, and it's a red state. She hates the politics. She probably hates half the people there, and she's been very bitter. She just doesn't, and I find that the people, like friends that I have that are extremely liberal. I mean, I used to be a Democrat. When I lived in Vermont, they asked me to be the head of the Democratic Party in my town.
Oh, that was an honor. Listen, Mabel, hang on to the line. We got to take another break for commercials, and I'm going to bring you into the next segment, so don't hang up. We'll be right back.
Okay.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking with Mabel in Texas. Used to be a Democrat. I grew up in a traditional conservative environment, New Hampshire. But I've never really had a strong affinity for any of the political parties. I tend to vote the issues and the people rather than just go along with the party line. I'm not a party line kind of person, if you hadn't figured that out yet. But if you look back at those stories I reported on in Hour 1, where the Democratic Party is now starting to see a centrist movement, I think a lot of people are getting disillusioned with the Democrats as they are today. Mabel, are you there?
Yep, you just cut out for a minute there.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, I understand that, but this, I mean, the older I get, the more I realize how that party has gotten so out of kilter, like worrying about gender bathrooms and things like that. They're non-issues. They're not going to win anything. People care about like the economy. They care about safety. They care about things like that. They don't care. I don't really want a guy coming in the ladies' bathroom because he thinks he's a woman. He's not. And my friends, oh no, she's like, oh, they were so into the gender bathroom thing, the one that gave me the scathing response. Oh, well, I don't find any problem with, someone coming in if they're not going to harm me if they think they're, if their mindset is a woman, they might be
or even children. And we had a story last week where this man who identified as a woman was put in the women's jail and raped 4 of the other inmates before he was finally moved to a men's prison. It really is nonsense, but I think liberalism has almost achieved a cult-like status, if you will, in that they've run out of ideas which, as you say, connect to the American mainstream, and they just became more and more extreme, and they all got caught up with this idea, we're going to change the world, we're going to bring about, even if the change is silly, like transgenders, men in the women's bathroom and so forth, it was a cause just for the sake of having a cause, and they ran out of ideas. They were out of ideas all the way back in 2016, which is why Hillary was playing the gender card and the gay card and the abortion card and all of that stuff, because the Democrats didn't really have any solid ideas on how to make this country better. For that matter, neither did the Republicans. Maybe both parties realize that this country can't be saved, and so we may see some real bizarre politics in the near future.
Yep, it's true. And I learned that you cannot challenge a Hillary supporter, because if you say the reason why Hillary didn't win is because nobody likes Hillary, they go ballistic. They just go ballistic.
Well,
so,
Hillary ran her campaign as a personality cult, and what you're talking to is a cultist there. I mean, they're as whacked out about Hillary as any other cult. The Scientologists look tame compared to the Hillary supporters.
Oh, exactly. But I just wanted to let you know that, because sometimes when you inform people, you get blasted for it because they don't want to hear the truth. They just don't want to hear it.
I'm certainly very familiar with that. I've gotten used to it over the last 24 years.
I'm sure you have.
The trick, though, is to work on your presentation. Now, there are some people who are just not interested, like your friend. There are those who are sort of sitting on the fence. They're not sure which way they're going to go. Those are the ones that you invest your time in.
Yeah, and I definitely put it out there as a historical facts, and that was that. And some of my friends said that was great. Other friends were like, lambasting me also. But I'm still going to do it.
Well, I think one of the reasons you may have been lambasted by the liberals is how often they talk about killing President Trump. And it's rather amazing to like Robert De Niro, for example. And
I know.
So I imagine that somebody would realize that linkage and be very offended by it. Anyway, Mabel, we're going to let you go here. We're going to open up the phone lines here. Thank you for the call.
Thank you for taking my call.
All right, the phone lines are open again, 800-313-9443. Now, as you know, not too long ago, over on The View, which I don't watch, Whoopi Goldberg got into it with Fox News Judge Jeanine Pirro and wound up spitting and yelling at her. And it caused a firestorm of interest, which has now translated to Jeanine Pirro's book, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals, soaring to #1 on the Amazon bestsellers list. Now, maybe it was a PR stunt all along, because they all work in corporate media, but if it was on the up and up, then what we have here is a situation where, Whoopi Goldberg basically helped Judge Jeanine Pirro become a best-selling author here. Alrighty, getting on over here. And, Nicaragua appears to be heating up, because during the break I noticed Fox News had the president of Nicaragua on the TV basically saying that there will not be early elections. That would just confuse things more. And just that Nicaragua deserves respect as any state would. So I'm not sure what the message is supposed to be, but we know that things have gotten really out of hand down there. Is it a real organic uprising, or is it more of the U.S. going on in and causing trouble to destabilize a government here? Now, getting on back to Syria, there's an interesting article in Government Slaves here pointing out the fact that Qatar has spent $3 billion to support the rebels in Syria. And one reason may be, remember I said it's all about those pipelines. Qatar is the largest exporter of liquefied natural gas in the world, and Assad won't let them build a natural gas pipeline through Syria. So Qatar, along with the United States, wants to install a puppet regime in Syria that will allow them to build a pipeline. And and basically get that pipeline right of way. Israel also wants to build a pipeline through Syria so that they can take that oil and gas they're stealing from inside the Golan and get it up to Europe. It's easy to underestimate the geopolitical impact that these pipeline rights of way really have, to the point where, yeah, wars are being fought over the pipeline right of way. That was why we went into Afghanistan. A pipeline right of way. And of course the opium here. Now, Occupy ICE is still out there, and we're seeing a lot of news about how contentious it's getting. We could really reach a point where the illegal immigrants literally start rioting, and we legals may be forced to react. But it's a tense situation out there. Up in Portland, Oregon, apparently businesses are having to close their business. And there's the Occupy ICE PDX camp. They're closing the business due to threats and verbal attacks by the protesters. So basically, the owners of the Happy Camper Food and Coffee Bar say they no longer feel safe in the neighborhood after their daughter, who works at the cart, was threatened. And they're going to sell their little food cart. So once again, we have a situation where the liberals are always screaming about how violent conservatives are, and yet when you get right down to it, it's the liberals who are behaving like savages. Threats, insults, and this is going to end badly here. Alrighty, now there's, as you know, Pope Francis came on out recently in favor of open borders, and I think it's an inappropriate intrusion of religion into the affairs of nations. But apparently this Catholic priest, James Martin, made a video asking, why are so many Christians still against migrants and refugees? And he begins the video with the phrase, why do some people hate refugees? Well, I'm sure they don't start out hating the refugees until they get to live with them for a while. Now, I understand why the Catholic Church is interested in open borders and getting more refugees into Europe and the United States, into the Catholic lands, as it were. Because religion is on the wane, especially among the millennials. And a lot of churches are struggling just to get by. And so I think the plan here by the Pope is to flood these Catholic countries with refugees and lure them in to keep those collection plates full so the bishop can make bail. Apparently, Russia's military has shot down 2 unidentified drones that attacked its Syrian airbase at Hmeimim on Saturday and Sunday. Now, the attacks caused no casualties or damage, and the airbase is operating as normal. So, who uses unmarked aircraft that we remember from the USS Liberty, as it were here? Okay, now then, let's get on down here. Talked about that. We talked about that. Let's talk about the Jewish nation state law. This one has upset a lot of people, and not just in Israel itself. In fact, it's interesting. On Friday's show, I said Israel's attitude seems to be, yeah, we're an apartheid state. What are you going to do about it? And oddly enough, there was a story on one of the media websites that carried that exact headline. So everybody has noticed. And I think Israel is in a stage right now where their arrogance, their hubris is working against them. Where their attitude is, we're going to do what we're going to do and you can't touch us. We're protected at the United Nations. We got nuclear weapons. We're just going to do what we want to do. In other words, a rogue nation, or a pirate nation, if you will. And there was this article that came on out from Middle East Monitor basically saying that the reality is Israel never really was a democracy, because obviously if you legalize apartheid, you're no longer a democracy. And I would advise Israel to remember that one of their former trading partners in nuclear weapons, South Africa, was an apartheid state. And in the long run, it didn't work out. Story coming out of Information Clearinghouse. Oh, I already talked about this one. Okay, apparently James Comey has come on out with a plea to Democrats. Now, as you know, the other day he came on out and said that anybody who doesn't vote Democrat is being un-American. Now that he's no longer in government service, he's not in danger of violating the Hatch Act, and he's out there on the campaign trail. And so he's making these videos saying, or rather tweets rather, saying, and he too is becoming a centrist. He's saying, Democrats, please don't lose your minds and rush to the socialist left, because that's what Trump wants you to do. See, it's all Trump's fault again. And I think he's alarmed by the fact that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has taken the left by storm. And she is playing to that extreme left edge. She's out there encouraging the Occupy ICE. She wants totally open borders. She's pandering to the liberals as she has known them. And there are a lot of people who are concerned that more Democrats like this could actually sink the party itself, which is why we've had people coming on out and saying, we'd rather you voted Republican than to vote for her. We're seeing Democrats come on out and say, we'd rather you vote Republican than vote for this lady here. So, all right. Talked about the settlers here. And yeah, this is the article. I am an apartheid state. What are you going to do about it? Appeared in Middle East Monitor. Now, as you probably know, if you are a fan of the Discovery Channel, it's Shark Week. Actually, it's going to be 2 weeks. And over at, and everybody's fascinated with sharks all of a sudden. Even National Geographic is doing 2 weeks of documentaries on sharks. And don't get me wrong, sharks are interesting animals. I just need them in small doses here. But apparently, they kicked off Shark Week with Shaquille O'Neal getting into the water with sharks for the first time in his life. And he was teamed up with Rob Riggle for the adventure, and they had a shark cage. The shark had other ideas. Shark actually managed to start breaking into the cage, and they had to get Shaquille and Rob out of there just as fast as they could. So that must have been a really big shark, and those cages do have to be strong. Which reminds me of a funny story from many, many years ago on the first movie, Jaws. Because there's a scene where the Richard Dreyfuss character gets into the water in a shark cage. And they basically not told the prop shop the cage was actually going to be in the water with sharks, where they had a stuntman go down there in shark-infested waters to basically film the scenes where the Richard Dreyfuss character is fending them off. And so the prop shop had made the cage out of aluminum. And the sharks tore it apart, and fortunately the stuntman did make it back to the boat safely. But they are very aggressive creatures. I remember when I was a kid, was out on a boat with a live bait tank on the back, and one of the bait fish was bleeding into the water and through the overflow, and all of a sudden this shark comes booming up out of the water, grabbing the bait tank and flips over the transom into the boat itself. And I'll tell you the rest of the story when we come back from these few words. And aloha America, welcome back to our show, last segment of our program today, and I'm sharing my shark story with you all. And this was way back when I was basically a kid, high school, and my father had this cabin cruiser, and we would go out on the water off Southern California. And so, because Ray liked to fish, we had a live bait tank hanging off the transom. And because there was an injured fish in the bait tank, it attracted a rather nasty shark. Basically boomed up out of the water, grabbing the bait tank, and his motion carried him across the transom onto the floor, where he's thrashing around like crazy and everybody's scrambling. So I grabbed an oar and I shoved it in his mouth, trying to basically keep him from getting anywhere with those teeth. And he clamps down, or she clamps down on the sword, on the oar, and won't let go. And I basically get the oar over a piece of the boat's structure and use it to lever the shark back out over into the water, at which point I was hoping the shark would let go, but he just kept chewing away. And so by the time the oar got down to the size of a cricket bat, I figured, let him have it. And so I did. I just let go, and the shark went off with the oar. So that's my shark story. Out here in Hawaii, our volcano is still volcanoing. Kilauea's summit is subsiding. I saw some interesting radar interferometry images showing how much it's sinking, and there's a time-lapse movie out there now that really shows the floor of Kilauea crater is sinking. And they're continuing to have major events up there at the summit equal to about a magnitude 5 quake. That's got to be very rough on the people of Volcano. If that whole area is subsiding, they're looking at the potential for major structural damage. First of all, to Volcano House, which is a very historic building, and possibly even to the buildings of the Volcano National Park itself, which, by the way, that's all closed and is not expected to reopen. Nobody still knows when this thing is going to end. And all we can do is wait it on out, take care of the people who lost their homes, because we are living on a volcano, and volcanoes do this. Now, not this island. This island hasn't had an eruption for millions of years. The hot spot is now down off the southern edge of the Big Island. That's where the action is. Somebody actually wrote me a letter just now saying, when will you confess that our society is broken? I've been saying that for quite some time. Our society is broken. We've lost our moral compass. We've lost our values. We're caught up in vanity and self-aggrandizement. We're allowing the lust for money to lead us into some very selfish and dangerous directions. It takes a lot of balance to have a working society. We don't have that, and it is broken. And I have been saying that for quite some time. I'm still thinking the future of this country is a Soviet Union-style collapse, and considering how things are accelerating, it feels like it could be very, very soon. So there's the music. It's time for me to get on out of here and do the Jim Goddard Show up there in Vancouver. Stay tuned for John Stedmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. It is very important that you take what you learn here and at the website and show it to everybody that you know. In particular, that letter from GCHQ that says they did spy on Trump at the request of President Obama. That needs to get out there. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.